welcome to another episode of It Resolves. My name is Kevin.
My name is Will. Welcome back. Thank you for tuning in, watching or listening, doing it how you're doing it, wherever you're doing it. I was remarking on how bored I looked when we introed this segment.
Yeah.
I was kind of sat like this, not remembering that we do a little dance.
No. Immediately.
Oh, gosh.
Now's a good time to say this video is sponsored by Cardsphere.com. The best place to buy, sell, and trade cards on the internet. I use it regularly. It's awesome. I highly suggest it. Their link is in the description. I also want to mention, before we get into this episode, Will and I, as you may have seen on Instagram, we teased it a little bit, I suppose. We recorded our next Versus video, which if you missed the last one, it was a lot of fun. It was much more produced, I guess is the word, than any other thing that we've set out to make. And this time we set out to make some improvements on the improved video itself. So we're really proud of it so far. We've only got the first 2 minutes done, but we're going to hopefully have it done next week.
It's a crucial part of any video.
Yes, the first 2 minutes. It's the most important 2 minutes.
Probably.
Maybe.
Followed maybe only by the most important 3 minutes.
Yeah, well, of course.
Yeah, I mean, the video just keeps getting more important as the minutes progress. You don't want any bad minutes. There's really no unimportant minute.
Up until the point where you know who won the game.
Ah, I see.
Because there's time after that. There's always going to be some time after that. The wrap-up.
Sure. The cleanup step.
The cleanup step.
Isn't that what it's called in Magic?
Yes.
The cleanup phase?
And the command zone coins that term for
yes. I forgot they did that. I forgot they did that.
Guys, with this episode, we actually had a suggestion from a good friend of ours who basically was just asking the question, what is midrange? Like in depth, what is midrange? Not just like it's a deck trying to win in the middle of the game. So like our goal today is to try and answer that question, give you guys a good idea. Of course, though, we are going to start with our random card of the day. And we need to come up with a question of the week.
I'm on it.
You got it? And then, of course, our first Core 2019 pack openings for the Crack-A-Pack, sponsored, of course, by Grand Slam Comics and Collectibles. Link in the description, as always, to their Facebook group. But let's kick it off. Random card of the day time. 3,
Spin it.
2, 1. All right.
It's great. Okay.
Dark Ritual. You should probably know this card. It is 1 black for a... Is it technically an instant?
It is.
Okay.
It is an instant.
It's coming up as mana source on Tempest. But basically, you add 3 black mana to your mana pool. It is an instant. Yeah. What you doing there, bud?
I was just trying to get off this, and it macked me out.
So tell me about this card, Will.
Dark Ritual is a super powerful card, even though on its onset it doesn't look like it does much. It nets you 2 black mana, really, any turn you would play it. So, again, new players, you don't really want to play this. However, the decks it goes in profit immensely from this. So it hits Storm. Kind of is like the more popular decks Dark Ritual will go into. It hits
a personal favorite of mine,
Doomsday.
Yeah.
It hits Doomsday in a big way.
Turn 1 of Doomsday.
Hate that deck.
That's relevant.
It is, gosh.
The card is amazing. It hits a lot of like vintage old school decks. Not so much, obviously it's not played in anything like modern or anything like that. It is legal in Pauper. I don't know that it hits any Pauper decks though. I can't think of any.
Storm.
No, because Storm was nerfed in Pauper for sure. Plus it would have been a red base Pauper deck. It wouldn't have been black anyways. But this card's sweet. Not enough good things to be said about this. There are situations where it's not the best. It was reprinted in a master set recently,
which is fine.
And it's fine. It was to get the card sort of in circulation again, but like in a draft sense, it wasn't that good.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
In a cube draft, it's great, but in just like a standard set draft, not very good at all.
No, I don't think so.
There are situations where it's okay, but generally speaking.
Yeah, it is, it's a card that relies on another card, right?
That's exactly it, and you really don't want that in drafts most of the time.
No, if you need another card to make another card good, you probably shouldn't draft it.
That's why, like, and this is something I point out in Crack-A-Packs, which I guess we don't really talk about ever, but enchant creatures, generally speaking, in draft, I don't like. That's not always the case. There are some that are game winners, like On Sarah's Wings and stuff like that. It's fantastic.
Armadillo Cloak
is great.
Yeah.
And there are certain situations where it's kind of okay, but generally speaking, it sort of opens yourself up to 2-for-1s.
Definitely.
And so I just generally stay away from them unless it's like enchant creature can't attack or block. Then you just got a removal spell.
Well, yeah, that's different.
Hey there.
Pacifism. Pacifism's nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Dark Ritual, great historic spell, you could say, you know.
Yeah, definitely. It was in the original sets.
Yeah. Is it one of the 1 mana? Oh, it is. That's right.
Yeah. It was the 1 mana cycle.
That's right.
Bolt, Giant Growth.
It does 3 stuff, yeah. Bolt, Giant Growth, Dark Ritual.
Ancestral.
And White's the worst. I think it's just gain 3 life.
Is it?
I think that's it.
Is it? Maybe. I don't know. I actually can't remember, so I'll defer to you. Sure.
I think that's what it was.
I believe you. 100%. Guys, let's talk about mid-range. Will.
Yo!
Why don't you lead us off a little bit?
Sure. So one of our good buddies asked us to talk about mid-range, like Kevin said. And mid-range is an archetype that the name is thrown around a lot with not a lot of explanation, I think, for a lot of new players or players who have only been playing a while. Mid-range doesn't get talked about in depth, really. Each deck is different in a lot of ways. Like, there's a few different ways to play mid-range. It's not just like a control deck that has a bunch of counters, has a bunch of draw, and then eventually here's their threat. Mid-range is really, really... Each deck's unique in the way they take that approach. So what mid-range essentially is, in the most purest sense, it is playing the best spell at every turn they can, like as per their CMC. So on turn 1, they want the best 1-drop they can play. Turn 2, the best 2-drop. Turn 3, etc., etc. And really, they are looking to have the value of the game locked down by turn 4, turn 5, around there. That's when they want to say, all right, I've built my board, I have all my things, or maybe I've destroyed one of your things, I've answered your whatever.
Yeah.
Let's
it's
get
sort
this
of the
going.
tipping point is around that turn. And what the most common thing that I find is when I bring up the term mid-range to people, they're like, oh, so you're trying to win on turn 5. And it's like, well, that's not technically true. I mean, certainly that's possible. And certainly you want to be in a commanding position between turns 4 and 6 is really the ideal zone. But that's not to say that you actually won the game at that point. That's saying hopefully that's the point where you're tipping into the lead and actually going to start taking over around that time. And I think that's the most common misconception is that, like, well, it's just winning a turn or 2 later. Why is that good?
Well,
but like,
and that's not even, and that's
not even close.
Because if you think about it, we say aggro decks really win on turn 3, turn 4, stuff like that, right? We've said that. What that actually means is that if I'm playing an aggro deck, my opponent has no options. My board is filled. I'm swinging every turn. Like, I'm representing lethal if they don't have any blockers, stuff like that. So I have the game locked down by turn 3, turn 4, something. Mid-range just seeks to do that a little bit later by making sure that other decks are outvalued or just dealt with earlier, right?
That's exactly it. And I think you touched on this a little bit already, that there are different styles of mid-range decks. The one that I classically think of, obviously, is Jund. That's sort of, in my mind, the picture-perfect kind of mid-range deck. Okay. And the reason I say that is because its early turns 1 and 2, are spent playing very high-value spells. So things like Thoughtseize on turn 1, some hand destruction, that way you can get some of the scary stuff out of the opponent's hand. Turn 2, things like Dark Confidant, which is going to draw you into more and more value and keep your engines turning. And then turn 3, just some sort of, like, I don't know, you could play a removal spell, you could play like a scary creature of some kind, something along a Lily is great. But there's a lot of options. Turn 4, obviously, there's Bloodbraid is back and things like that. Yeah. And again, each spell is just so high value at every point in the game, and that's what's fantastic about it.
Yeah, definitely.
And certainly what I really like about the Jund deck, and it highlights this very well, is that it can play 2 sides of the same strategy sort of thing. Like, it can play multiple ways to get to its win. And that's classically what mid-range decks are hoping to do. So against an aggro deck, they generally want to just sort of sit back, 1-for-1 removal until they can sweep, and then just start taking over. Remove all the spells and then just last until turn 4, turn 5, and then start taking over. Sure. Against a control deck, what they can do, hopefully, is play some value creatures on the early end of the game. Things like Tarmogoyf, which is absolutely scary for any control deck.
It's busted.
It's just so good. Dealing a lot of extra damage in the early turns and then hopefully winning before they can get to their bomb or deal with their cards. And so it sort of can flip the strategy no matter what. And something you mentioned before we started is that after sideboard, obviously, it just gets so much more likely that the mid-range, especially something like Jund, is just going to pull out the win. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Basically, once mid-range knows kind of how it needs to tailor itself, it's got a pretty good chance of taking it. A great example, I think, of mid-range deck actually came in Standard Season a while ago. I have two, but the one I'll bring up first is the Mardu mid-range. So Mardu mid-range was a really nasty deck because its curve was so good in Standard at the time. If you want to talk about its optimal turn, it's turn 4 really when it gets to drop Gideon Ally of Zendikar. Just start making night tokens and just filling the board, pumping creatures, and it's got Heart of Kieran already at turn 2, so it just swings out. It kicks butt. And that's a really good example. If you look at the spells in that deck's lists, it's got 1-drops that give yourself protection, future card advantage. Inspector of Thraben is the one that comes to mind.
Inspector of Thraben?
Yeah.
Thraben Inspector?
Oh, is that it?
I think it's Thraben Inspector.
Same thing. Turn 2, it's got some other cute stuff. Who's the artifact that's scary? 1 black. Foundry something? Whatever.
1 black, I don't know.
It's 2 colorless, but it's got the 1 black returns to the field. Whatever. And then it's got some removal on turn 3. To kind of lock up the board at that point. The other deck that I think is a solid example of a mid-range deck was actually from Theros, the Theros block. Green White Good Stuff is kind of what it was called, or Selesnya Beatdown, whatever you want to say. Turn 1, it Birds of Paradise, which isn't like a threat necessarily, but it is a must answer for sure. Because then turn 2, if it untaps with birds, it gets access to Loxodon Smiter, it gets access to the 2/2 double strike heroic creature that did work. It gets access to...
What's the other? Trying to think of that. Fleece Mainline.
Yeah, Fleece Mainline. I mean, really, you get that. In turn 2, no matter what. But what I'm saying is, at every point in the game, at every curve, whatever you want to say it, the best spell is in their deck. And it's flopping down, or at least the most board affecting spell. Now, the thing that mid-range suffers from is kind of big. When you're just playing all of these must-answer spells or all of these really powerful spells, what it lacks is synergy, right? Now, mid-range doesn't really care about synergy on the onset. It's just looking to play the most powerful thing it can at any point in the game, which is fine. But some decks work way better together, right? Like you have, for example...
Merfolk.
Yeah, that's a great one. Merfolk deck. It builds its value... it's a snowball effect kind of, whereas you can picture mid-range as kind of you're just stacking a bunch of Lego blocks, and then eventually you just have the highest Lego block, whereas Merfolk, I don't know,
you play 1 Lego block, but then you play 2 at the same time, and then you play 3 on top of that.
I
don't know.
That works.
Sort of.
Where it's like a go wide value thing. Or even spirits.
Oh,
spirits in Modern. It has way more synergy than any than any other mid-range deck. But it kind of seeks to do the same thing, where it controls the early game with your spell quellers, with some basic counters and stuff like that. And then just eventually by turn 4 or 5, it's got a bunch of beefy flyers, and now you don't know what to do with it. And it just, beats you in the face all the time. So what I'm saying is mid-range suffers from doing a bunch of stuff that's really good, but not one thing great.
And that's something, that makes perfect sense. And to speak with specifics, a lot of the time you'll see, so I'm going to take Jund as the example again, but Jund runs obviously scavenging oozes and things like that to deal with graveyard decks a lot, but it generally only runs one or two of them. It's a high value spell, but it's really only high value against certain decks. And so it doesn't necessarily run the full gambit. And so what I see it suffer from a lot of the time is you'll be playing up against a deck that you have an answer for in your deck, but you don't always get to the answer in your deck.
Right.
That's the hard part. And again, they have, it's not a toolbox deck. Don't get me wrong when I say that, but it definitely has a lot of toolbox effects in it. It's just getting to them. That's the hard part.
And that's a great thing to point out is a mid-range deck, a good mid-range deck, you will not see run any draw spells.
Yeah.
So what it wants to do is affect the board state above all else. Now, Thoughtseize, sorry, my phone is not on silent. Thoughtseize, even it is one of the best turn one plays you can do in Magic. It's my favorite, and it's run in mid range because it will eventually there's not a ton of powerful one drops, right? So being able to remove something instantly just makes your hand have so much more value already, right? So that's why you see a lot of Thoughtseize, but no draw spells, really no like,
except maybe stuff like Dark Confidant. But like
in Jund's case,
but not that's
even
because it's a high value kind of thing. It's not like it's a one-time draw spell. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
Dark Confidant, there's a big difference between the two.
It's a permanent that sticks around, which isn't always super relevant, but now and then Dark Confidant can swing for 2 for free, which is fine. It will just left alone you draw a bunch of cards with Confidant, it's great. So Confidant is kind of one of those must-answer spells, right?
And that's exactly what you started with, is that a lot of just must-answer cards in a deck kind of makes up a lot of the mid-range decks, you know what I mean? And so Dark Confidant is absolutely one of those. You're just going to start, if you're drawing 2 cards a turn, you are just outpacing your opponent.
Definitely.
Burying them in card advantage. So just must-answer spells. That's a lot of it. So,
pretty much. So no draw spells. You rely kind of on the randomness of your deck, definitely. Dark Confidant's a good example of a mid-range deck having a card advantage engine of some kind. More often than not, they won't. Yeah. Like take that Mardu Vehicles deck, for instance. Thraben Inspector was it. Its clue token was it, right? They didn't have another way to draw cards. And now and then, you crack a clue, you draw a card, that's great. But really, there was no way to search through their deck. So you're banking on the fact that, okay, by turn 4, I will have drawn, if I'm on the play, 3 cards. Yeah. So hopefully in those 3 cards, I will be able to control the board enough to be in a commanding position or have drawn my turn 4 threat, in that case, Gideon. Yeah. Which is how I want to seal out the game. Yeah. Right.
And one thing that I want to point out with these decks, too, is like it's obviously very important to be able to play all of these high-value spells. And generally what you'll see is with the land count, it'll be a little bit higher than you would actually think it would need to be. And it's not necessarily in the control range where they're running just tons and tons of lands.
Not 25, no.
Yeah, but they're still going to be running a hefty amount, and that's because they need to not only have their colors, because oftentimes they're multicolored decks trying to splash for different either removals, sweepers, high-value creatures, things like that, but also just a high land count in general, just to make sure that they're hitting their land drops, because it's so key in that deck to actually hit your land drop. If you don't, you're just falling so far behind, and all you're trying to do is outvalue the opponent. And so if you just don't hit your land drops, you will just be outvalued, unfortunately. So it's just a very crucial thing to have the proper land count in a mid-range deck.
Since our buddy who asked, I know he's a standard player, he just played in a tournament recently. Yeah. Which is awesome. So we'll give him a standard relevant mid-range deck.
Go for it.
And probably one of the best examples. And that would be Blue-Black Control.
Yes.
It's marketed as a control deck because it runs a ton of counters and draw.
Right.
And we just said mid-range doesn't get draw spells. But bear with me. Its draw really just comes in the package of Champion of Wits.
Yeah.
And Glint Sleeve Siphoner, stuff like that. It does run like Opt, just because Opt is a nice...
It smooths out your draws a little bit,
definitely.
For sure.
Opt is a nice end step spell to have. It's cute. But this is probably a more... It's a more exciting evolution of mid-range, I'll say, because it doesn't really have to tailor too much after sideboard. Because in its first 4 to 5 turns, its strategy doesn't change much because it doesn't have to. You've played 2/2 bodies that can block pretty profitably against aggro decks. You've played 2/2 bodies that are threats against control decks.
Yeah.
You have counters to counter your aggressive decks, like turn 3 plays, stuff like that when they're tapped out and that's their only thing. So your early turns don't change a ton no matter who you're facing. And then the latter stages, you get your Torrential Gear Hulks, which are, we know the strength. You get your Scarab God, which is kind of the best card, I think, in Standard right now. In terms of the game, kind of the conversation in a game revolves around the Scarab God once it resolves. So that at turn 8 is really when you want to play that, not necessarily turn 5. Because at that point you can start using the mana to pull stuff from their yard, stuff from your yard, things like that. So that is I think the coolest evolution of mid-range. I'd encourage you to go check out that list, blue-black control or blue-black mid-range, some people call it. It is more so a mid-range deck, I think, even though it's heavy on the controlling side.
I was going to say, it's got the controlling elements, but it's all for the purpose of outvaluing. It's not you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't... I don't see it as a control deck, even though it's got those elements to it.
Right.
So.
Right. It does run in the sideboard a lot of like control stuff because Esper Control is a popular deck right now, and for that deck, the best way to deal with the control deck is more counters, more negates, more sensors, stuff like that.
Yes.
Even though it's still got a lot in the main board.
Yeah.
And it does a pretty good job against Esper already. Let's see. Anything else I want to say about mid-range?
I was going to say, not really. I think we kind of covered everything. By all means, if we missed anything, let us know. But
if you have to give them a top, like the top 3 tips for a if you out there, he, she, whomever, building a mid-range deck, what's the 3 best points you can give them?
Always look for 2-for-1s. That's always important in my mind.
Like a card that is...
Like, Bloodbraid is perfect because it's always going to be a 2-for-1 no matter what. Stuff like that. Or they have to answer stuff like must-answer cards. Look... What good tips. I didn't think about this.
I've got one. When you're looking to build a mid-range deck, you want to look at the CMC of a card. And think about what the most effective thing you can be doing on turn 2 is. Yeah. Don't necessarily think about how am I going to answer this thing, unless that thing obviously is meta breaking. Yeah. Like the Scarab God. Have an answer for the Scarab God, but don't necessarily think I need to put this card in here to answer this situation. Because what your goal should be is by the time this happens, I'm already stronger. Yeah. So even if, here's a good example. If you're playing a Scarab God deck, or a Godfarer's Gift deck. This is better. Godfarer's Gift is kind of controlly, but not always. It plays a lot of the same stuff as Blue-Black does, Champion of Witch, stuff like that. But Gift doesn't really get going until Gift is on the field, right? Yeah. So you have a lot of time, if your deck is clicking, to build your board to have your advantage up until then. So picture that. If I'm playing a scary deck, I need to beat them before they can beat me. And at turn 2, this is the best way to do that. At turn 3, this is the best way to do that. Yeah. So think about at the curve, what's the best thing I can be doing? Yeah, I think that makes sense. Definitely. I would also say and this sort of goes for most decks in general, but I think with mid-range in particular, have outs to everything. And what I mean by that is, like, in the main deck, have 1 or 2 outs to everything, but then in your sideboard, because that's where you're going to start really winning the games, be able to tailor your entire deck and flip your strategy if you really need to. Because there will be situations where you're going to have to just completely flip, take out all the hand destruction, take out stuff like that for stuff that is going to do a little bit more against like graveyard decks or something like that. It's a bit of a cop-out, though. I don't think you have to have outs. I think you do. I like having outs. I know you do, but that goes against the value strategy. Because, like, here's the thing. Mid-range is not reactionary in any way. Mid-range is always like, here's my thing. Do something. You know what I mean? Sure. Like, Jund is a great example of a mid-range deck, but Jund is not the archetypal mid-range deck necessarily. Yeah. Jund is only mid-range, really, if you think about its value of spells. Like, everything in that deck is a rare or a mythic rare. Except for Bloodbraid, which is uncommon.
Way to go, Bloodbraid.
Yeah, but being powerful.
Way to be there.
But it really just it values the curve, I think, way more than
That's
other
fair.
decks.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
for Black having such a heavy hand in Jund, just based on its color restrictions, I think it makes sense to have Thoughtseize and Dark Confidant and even Blightning and stuff like that. Only because what else are you going to do with Black? Like, Black later in the game, its spells aren't as...
They're not hugely impactful in the game.
No, and that's
I
not...
mean, Liliana sometimes, but like that's very
Well, yeah, but...
situational.
Definitely. Like, Black doesn't have... If you think about Modern, Black doesn't have a lot of, like, scary turn 5, turn 4 spells like that. Just because it's not built... Like, the colors elements don't lend themselves to that.
Exactly.
Right? They're definitely a more... it's kind of like the second most controlling color, right?
Sure.
And so the best things for... If you're playing Black, the best things to do are have a Thoughtseize. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's not to say that, like, you could have... This is kind of a rambly one, but you could have, like, a green-red mid-range deck easily, I think.
Definitely.
However, if you're playing green-red, I think it's better to play aggro because there's a bunch of stuff to play early.
Definitely.
All that to say is I don't think a mid-range... This is my opinion. I don't think a mid-range deck has to have answers. I think it wants to play spells that have to be answered.
That's fair.
So if... Because that's kind of the aggro element. It's making your opponent have it. If you don't have anything for my Fleece main, on turn 5, you can't kill it. Sorry. Duff.
Yeah.
You don't have anything for Loxodon? Well, when I untap on turn 4, that's a 4/4 beater.
Yeah.
Or, well, if I have birds, turn 3.
Turn 3.
Which is nuts. Standard at the time,
Yeah.
couldn't keep up with that.
That's true. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying.
By the way, Loxodon can't be countered.
It can't.
And
if you have to discard it, then it just comes into play. There's also cards like Voice of Resurgence where, like, if you kill
I
it...
forgot about Voice of Resurgence.
Yeah, Voice is just so good.
Voice is a monster.
Yeah, I loved that Selesnya deck.
That
is not my style of deck, but the value in that deck is insane.
Yes, it is. It was
so good.
It was my most frustrating matchup. Once I got away from Heroic because I was an idiot, I started playing Black Green.
Yeah,
like a lot of graveyard stuff.
Sure,
but
like Scavenge.
Yeah, dude.
You played Scavenge? That's interesting.
Not like a Scavenge deck, but it was an element.
Okay.
So it was kind of a Black Green mid range deck. Like I played Elvish Mystics to power out Desecration Demon like turn 3.
Yeah.
But Selesnya Charm does work all across.
Yes.
You know, it's got 3 modes really if you think about it, and one of those is exile a creature with 4 or greater power.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Desecration's 5/5 or 6. I don't remember. I don't remember. It's big though.
Another deck that I really enjoyed also, by the way, was Abzan midrange.
Abzan midrange was nasty.
Siege Rhino?
Yeah, Siege Rhino was like the best card in
engine?
Standard, I think.
Yeah, for a while
time.
it was. And I even think, because Abzan midrange is actually pretty popular now, even in Modern.
Yeah.
With things like Lingering Souls, it's like always a 2-for-1 at minimum, I guess. Because like you flash it back, you know? Like it's just so good. It's such a high value spell.
One of the Abzan lists I saw, like its only white spell main board was Lingering Souls.
Yeah.
Which I thought was super interesting.
Yeah.
Because it also played Blood Moon, this particular list.
Whoa.
Yeah. Which is awesome.
What?
Yes. Also played Blood Moon.
Dang.
I thought it was fantastic. So it ran a lot of like red stuff. It was a Pyromancer deck. So a lot of spells, a lot of cheap stuff. Its creatures were like 2 Pyromancer or 4 Pyromancer and 4 Bedlam Revelers.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So those are its threats. And then it has like...
Wait, was this Mardu you said?
Mardu
Okay,
midrange.
yeah. That deck is like super heavy in removal.
Yes.
It is insanely heavy.
There's so much removal.
It's,
and again, not a lot of draw.
No, hardly any.
Which
I
is
mean,
crazy.
Bedlam Reveler. Yeah, but like that's such a late game thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, not really.
It's late game in terms of that deck, I feel like, because most of the time it's just playing like 1-for-1 removal spells, hopefully with a young Pyromancer out, and then eventually, because you're subject to the draw in that deck, because that is your only draw.
Well,
and so like
it runs, and this is the cool thing about Lingering Souls, it runs Faithless Looting.
Yeah.
So if you're under your own Blood Moon, which I still think is a good idea, you should still do that. if you're under your own Blood Moon, you discard Lingering Souls to Faithless Looting.
Yeah.
That way you can still cast it if you don't have your planes out.
Yeah.
Actually, it didn't run any planes. That's right. That was also interesting. No planes, 2 mountains, 2 swamps, and then a bunch of like, I had like 6 black-red lands.
Yeah.
And then mountains.
That's insane.
Yeah. And
That's really
cool. 2 Sacred Foundries.
Oh.
But yeah, discard Lingering Souls if you're under your own Blood Moon to Faithless Looting, and then you can flash it back. I thought it was genius.
So good.
I thought it was a really cool deck.
I love that deck.
It's
really
never like a tournament heavy deck.
No, but we've seen it in top 8s every once in a while.
Yeah. Like it. I don't think I've seen it win one, but it's definitely it's competitive.
Yeah, it's pretty competitive.
For sure.
Well,
Check
and
out
right
that
now,
list too.
Yeah, honestly, it's really sweet. Right now, it has a lot of like decent matchups because a lot of stuff is creature based. I feel like right now, and so.
Do you want to talk at all about the difference between tempo and midrange?
If you want, do you want to?
I just had a thought. Yeah.
There's crossover in my mind.
Definitely, there's absolutely crossover.
But I do respect the fact that they're different things.
Like a good example for me, this is kind of my pet opinion, so to speak.
Okay.
I don't know if this is magic factual or not, but I tend to think of Death Shadow more as a tempo deck rather than a mid-range deck. And here's why.
Yeah, I kind of get that.
Here's why. With a tempo deck, it is far more important to play certain spells in the early turn, even if they're not necessarily the best. So you're looking to play Thought Scour, a bunch of stuff. You're looking to play specific lands, really all your shock lands, stuff like that. Obviously, you don't want to play Death Shadow. You want to play your Tassiger, your Gromag Angler, like turn 2 and 3.
Yeah.
Somewhere around there. So it's not looking to, even though its kit looks like a mid-range deck where it's got a lot of answers, it's got kind of its late game tipping point. What you're looking to do is set up your, I guess, not even your board, but just your entire area to be ready for ready for specific spells.
Yeah.
So you want to have a specific like set of mana because you want like early blue, but not a lot of early black necessarily.
Sure.
You're looking to have a filled graveyard, and you're looking to have like a delve creature ready.
Yeah.
To capitalize on that. So tempo decks principles kind of rely on playing the right spells earlier to then just kind of, there's like a rhythm to tempo.
Yeah, there definitely is.
Tempo.
Yeah.
It's all in the name.
Where I feel like there can be some crossover is actually with the birds decks and kind of ramp style decks. And the reason I say that is because tempo, a lot of times people think of tempo as, at least I did for a while. I was 100% wrong. But I thought of tempo as like, oh, well, I bounced a spell and played a little creature, so I'm ahead on tempo. And technically that is being ahead on tempo, but that's not the only way to do it.
Sure.
Ramping into a turn 3 creature on turn 2 is a turn ahead in tempo than your opponent, and like that sort of a thing. And so with your example, for instance, Birds of Paradise into Loxodon Smiter, that to me is a tempo, a turn ahead in that tempo game. And so ramp decks especially, which can be mid-range decks, a lot of times kind of just outpace a large number of other decks.
Sure.
So that's where I feel like there can be some crossover, obviously. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely some interesting stuff there too. Yeah,
I think that's an element of tempo, is taking the value away from your opponent, their value, really. Yeah. I wasn't prepared to delve into that necessarily, but I just had that thought.
No, I think that's fair.
Because I thought of Death Shadow just a second ago being a mid-range deck, and then I was like,
kind of, but not really.
It doesn't like play really good. Like, one drop.
Its one drops are kind of bad.
I mean, it's got Thoughtseize and like.
Yeah, but like.
And by one drops, we don't mean 1 mana spells. We mean spells that you play on turn 1. That's what I mean anyway.
Yeah,
it's
a
1 drop.
What I do think is interesting, and this is solely for Death Shadow, but I think that because normally Thoughtseize is like, oh, it's the catch-all kind of getaway card, but the -2 life kind of sucks. And in this case, that is putting more value into a card like Thoughtseize than any other normal deck would, which is kind of interesting.
And get probe.
May
he rest in peace.
That was really weird. Anyway.
Wow.
Yeah. So anything else on midrange?
No, I think it is a really great way to play Magic.
Yeah.
I think it's super fun for deck building.
Yeah.
Just making a value deck. It's cool.
Pick out the good stuff.
Yeah, try midrange out. It's nice.
It's a lot of fun.
Yep.
Generally, I will say midrange decks, at least in more Eternal formats, tend to be kind of pricey because it's all high value cards.
Sure.
So like,
in Eternal formats, yeah. And here's another interesting point we didn't talk about. Speaking of Eternal formats, you don't see a lot of them in Vintage and Legacy.
No. And
there are a few more in Legacy, but there's not really enough.
Yeah, but like a lot of them are like Sultai, like Leovold decks, and they're kind of more control-y.
Yeah, definitely.
The thing that you see, and the reason there's not so many mid-range decks is because there are also decks that can just win on turn one. And so
there's no point for a mid-range.
You can't really outpace that if you're a mid-range deck.
Mid-range can be turn 2.
There are a lot of similar cards, I guess, that you can see. I mean, because like hand destruction spells and things like that are rampant through both. But like, there are less dedicated mid-range decks for sure. Yeah. Because you're looking to break the game more, if that makes sense. You're not looking to just be one for one value, like no, you just want to win real quick. So
yeah, for sure. For sure.
But yeah, interesting point. Didn't think about that either. Yeah, but that's basically it, I think, for mid-range. If you guys do have any questions, or if you feel like we either got something wrong or we missed something, by all means, please let us know, because we would very much like to revisit this, I'm sure, at some point. But we're going to talk a little bit longer than maybe normal on the question of the week. Okay. Because some of these are interesting, I will say.
Bring it on.
Also, have you prepared the next question of the week?
Oh.
Be thinking about that.
Yeah, we'll go over it after that.
So basically the question of the week this past week was due to the banning of Deathrite Shaman and Git Probe. We thought what would be an interesting unbanning that should happen next. Yeah. One that came up in the comments and that we talked about last week, Stoneforge Mystic. Yeah. Guys, okay, here's the thing. We already did this. Yeah. We're going to do it again. This needs to happen. You guys need to get this in your head. Yeah. Stoneforge should not be unbanned in Modern because it is way, way too powerful.
So here's the thing. You'll hear commentators or Channel Fireball experts or Star City Games article writers or what have you talk about the meta of Modern. And a phrase that comes up a lot is Modern is a turn 4 format. Yeah. So what that means is the best decks in Modern are going off at turn 4 or reaching their peak, their powerful point at turn 4, which is kind of a healthy way to play. It encourages this mid-range strategy to kind of tie back into the main topic, where you want to be prepared in the early game to play must-answer spells, and you want to answer spells. And that's what you can do. For instance, the humans deck right now is kind of the boogeyman because it's kind of breaking that mold where
it is a bit,
right, where it's not answering much turn 1, 2, and 3. It's just building a board state that is like, you don't feel good destroying anything in humans because nothing's worth a ton until it's got a bunch of humans that are all just synergistic and all that stuff. Right. What I'm going to get back to it. So Modern's a turn 4 format.
Yes.
Stoneforge Mystic drops at turn 2, and then on turn 3, you will play your Batterskull. No?
You would.
Am I mistaken?
No.
Okay. Batterskull is not a turn 4 card. It doesn't respect that at all.
No. It's so good.
It's scary.
It's very scary. Not to mention...
is that right? Am I? Because Batterskull is a 4-drop, right?
I believe so. It's either 4 or 5. But either way, it is still a turn early, at least.
Yeah. Sorry. It comes in way too quick, is all I'm saying.
Yes, that's the takeaway. It's just so ridiculously fast, unfortunately. And, yes, there are, of course, ways to remove both Stoneforge and Batterskull. That's not really the point. The point is that it can get it out way, way too early. And it's just ridiculously powerful. Yeah. Not to mention, the deck that we reference a lot that broke standard was Callblade, which was Stoneforge and Jace. Guess what else is unbanned in Modern now?
Jaycee Poo.
And so the argument that we made, I believe, before Jace was unbanned was you could unban either one or the other.
Yeah.
I think we might have been mistaken.
You think you shouldn't even unban
I just
Stoneforge?
don't think Stoneforge should have been.
You're probably right.
Should ever be unbanned in Modern. It's just a little too quick. That's all.
You're probably right. Because here's the other thing that I'll point out. Stoneforge becomes kind of a 2-for-1. Or like a need for a 2-for-1.
Yeah.
Because if you don't answer Stoneforge, which again doesn't really feel good answering on its own, what you get is it's dropping equipment now. Your Batterskull, obviously. And swords also. So
interesting deck idea that I thought of while I was rambling about this. Sword of the Meek and Thopter Foundry, the infinite combo deck.
Ooh.
Stoneforge in that deck would just be insane.
Oh.
Yeah, that's dirty. That'd be fun. I mean, that shouldn't
so
be
much
legal,
fun.
but it'd be fun.
Right. For those of you wondering what the problem is with Jace and Stoneforge, where the relationship is, it all comes from that Caw-Blade deck, like Kevin said, where is Caw-Blade a mid-range deck?
I mean, yeah.
I'm about to jump into this explanation thinking like I'm about to talk about mid-range. Its early turns are must answer spells.
Yeah.
Jesus. Stoneforge, and then turn 3, you drop your Batterskull. Now you have a 5/5 beater. It's terrifying.
Yeah.
That's so hard to kill. And then turn 4, you're either playing Squadron Hawk, which by the way you'll get 2 of, or you're playing Jace, which will just seal out the game.
Fate sealing the opponent.
Yeah, I think Jace in Caw-Blade might be the one deck that fate seals more than like Brainstorms, maybe.
Probably so, because a lot of times you do drop Jace and just Brainstorm.
Right.
And there's a lot of reasons to do that, obviously. If you have shuffle effects on the field, it's great to be able to Brainstorm because then you can get rid of some dead cards and stuff like that. But in a commanding presence, like if you have a Batterskull and a Stoneforge out or something along those lines, chances are if you followed the curve that we just laid out,
right,
then you're probably in the commanding board presence kind of position.
Definitely.
And so at that point, it's just like, okay, well, let's just look at the top and see if you have an answer. If you do, we're gonna bottom that real quick. Yeah. And it's like, that feels so bad.
Yeah.
Like it's locking the game.
Yeah. So I mean, the argument for Stoneforge is we'll just run artifact removal, and you're good.
No, you're not.
Because you have to have it. Because if by turn 4 you don't have it, Jace makes sure you don't get it.
Yeah.
Which is the scary thing.
Yeah.
So, also, by the way, since he's played Squadron Hawks, plural, because now you have all of them in your hand, if perchance he draws another sword or Batterskull, the mana doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You just drop it.
Yeah.
So.
It's just too good. I mean, that's all that there is to it.
Yeah, it's scary.
Couple commander cards that came up.
Interesting. Okay, hit me with those.
So the first is Leovold.
No. And,
we're not even going to try
and
that.
And to you, sir, no. No.
Here's the thing. I love that deck. It should not be legal.
Never.
2 more that I thought were interesting. One less impactful, maybe. Primeval Titan. I don't think it should be because there's infinite combos where you just bounce it.
Less impactful.
No. Then the other card, yes. Then the other one.
Okay. Okay.
Primeval Titan is like ridiculous because you can exploit the mess out of it.
God,
if you want to pull 2 lands a million times on your turn, go for it. What was the Deadeye Navigator? Just combo with that?
Yeah.
And
forget it.
Yeah, it's just not a good idea.
Forget it. Forget about it.
So this one I think potentially is more impactful just because it's like if you don't answer it, then you just kind of lose. Prophet of Krufix.
Oh God.
Should definitely not be unbanned.
I love Prophet, but
I do too, but
again,
let me just play double my turns. Like that's basically what you're saying.
Yeah, like no, don't unban Prophet. I liked playing with Prophet, but
some people also said Worldfire and Emrakul. Emrakul definitely not.
Yeah, you're okay.
Yeah. Interesting. Somebody said, let me see, where was it? Oh, there was Stoneforge, Prophet of Krufix. There was one more. I'm like missing it. Cloud Post and Popper. Do you know what Cloud Post is? I do.
Yeah.
Because I love that. 12 Post Legacy is a sweet deck.
Yeah, Cloud Post and Popper.
I don't think you should, but like...
I honestly have no opinion. I'm not sure how dominant
I don't know either, because Tron's legal. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Right.
And
Like,
so
I don't
it's
know
like,
how.
it's just kind of more Tron is sort of how it would, in my mind, it would go.
Could you imagine Cloud Post and Tron, though? Like both of them?
Oh, I mean, that's what you do. I would think.
Yeah.
You would run it all in one deck.
And to play what, though, with Popper?
Well, that's the thing. Like, I mean, Ulamog's Crusher is like the best creature. Is there some like crazy X spell that I'm not thinking of?
That's in Popper?
That's the thing. Like in Popper, I feel like it's not going to be a dominating card if it is an X spell, but I don't know that.
Maybe some Hydra I'm not considering right now.
Maybe so. I don't know. That's an
But I'm not
interesting
sure.
one to me. I don't think it. Honestly, I just don't think Popper needs it. If it has Tron, I just don't.
I don't know.
think that.
I don't know the deck. I don't know the Cloud Post deck, so
I don't either.
maybe throw that
I
at
don't
us
either.
because
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with the strength of that one.
I don't keep up with Popper very much. I apologize.
I
love
go through spurts where I'm all into
Yeah,
Popper, then I'm like,
exactly.
nah. I'm like, I'm gonna make a Popper cube.
Dude, Popper's a sweet format. If
It
you
is
don't
really
play
fun.
Popper, you definitely should try it. It's like $20, so do it.
I mean, honestly,
Yeah,
it's nuts.
Although it went up, I guess fairly recently in the last few months, but
Like average, you mean?
yeah, well, because it was played on a like GP range for side events and stuff like that, and so costs just went up. I think Gush went up to like $10 at one point.
Gosh, is $10?
Not now. I think it dropped down to like $5, maybe a little less. I'm not sure. Correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, but yeah, so interesting. The last thing I wanted to say, a lot of people said we should unban everything. Some people said that we should unban everything for a month and then just see what happens. I kind of like that idea.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So he means keep the format structure, right?
Keep everything the same, just unban everything for 1 month.
Well, we know what would happen.
Yeah.
The best decks would. So Modern would only play like Dredge.
Infect? Oh, Dredge.
Yeah, like Dredge, Infect.
Yeah.
Honestly, maybe just Infect. There's some,
Infect is so good.
There's some dumb stuff. You can win on turn 2 in Modern.
Blazing Shoal.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So we would just see Infect in Modern.
Yeah.
Legacy, I think, would be
Legacy
safer.
and Vintage would become the same format.
Yeah, you're right.
So,
Well, Monastery Mentor would just take over Legacy again.
oh, yeah. 100%.
Right.
That's true. Well, really, just turn 0 win decks because you can play whatever you want.
And there's not a
So,
ton of
like,
those, but you're right.
There's not, but like, of course, people would do it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I don't know. I mean, it'd be funny for a month. Honestly, you could get away with just a week and it'd be hilarious. But like, I think the joke would run out by the end of the month.
Yeah. Standard, what would standard be? I mean, you get back Ramnup Ruins and that Raptor,
Yeah.
but
Copycat combo? Is that still in?
yeah, that's still in for a little while. It might just be that, honestly.
I mean, eh.
It was the best combo.
It was the best for sure.
until
I mean, it's an infinite combo
yeah.
in standard.
Okay, here's the question. Does Aetherwork survive in the current meta in standard?
Is that the question of the week? Or is this just a question?
Yeah.
That's such a specific question.
Because
of the week.
I forgot to think of one. You scared me when you said we should unban Primeval Titan. I puckered up a little bit. No, don't do that, you fools. No, okay.
That's a little too specific, I think, for a question of the week.
What are you most looking forward to? No, forget that. Best new commander card from M19. That's the question.
Okay, I'm good with that.
Because I'm curious about that. I have my own
I'd be
theories that I'll
interested
keep
too.
to myself for now.
Okay, cool. I like that. And speaking of Magic Core Set 2019, we finally get to open for the first time on the podcast our Core 2019 packs. These, of course, are sponsored by our good friends over at Grand Slam Comics and Collectibles. Thank you so much to them. There is a link to their Facebook group in the description. Go check it out. Follow them. Come hang out at the store. But we get new gold cards along with this.
We do.
So, Will, what is your gold card?
Leonin War Leader. I think it is going to be one of the best cards in Standard to build around.
Sweet.
Talking about a turn 4 must answer spell.
Yeah.
It's that one.
Yeah. I think it's up there. Mine is Supreme Phantom because Bant Spirits is a super sweet deck again.
Sure. All right. Are we doing that flippy thing?
Oh, yeah. Let's do the flippy thing.
So this is the token. This is the land. So this is it. Right?
Unless there's a foil. Yeah.
I don't think there's a foil. Ready?
Yeah.
Go. No. I did get a card that will certainly go into that deck. Mentor of the Meek. Whenever another creature with power 2 or less enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay 1. If you do, draw a card. Mentor of the Meek, turn 3, drop turn 4. Leonin War Leader, turn 5, swing and draw 2 cards. Seems pretty good.
Yes, it's really, really good. I got Detection Tower. I'm not even going to read it.
What does it do?
Okay, so you can tap it for 1 generic, and then you can pay 1 generic and tap it. Until the end of your turn,
right.
Your opponents and creatures your opponents control with hexproof can be the target of spells and abilities you control as though they didn't have hexproof. How useful in draft.
Nope.
I got Herald of Faith is probably going to be my pick. It is a 4/3 flyer for 5. And when it attacks, you gain 2 life. There's a really good black-white life gain theme. And so that would probably be a flagship card for that. So
yeah, I mean, you always
want
to look to the uncommons to see where you should go.
Yeah. Specifically in a core set, the gold uncommons are going to be very directional.
Sure.
I didn't get any, so
I didn't either. So I'm stuck between Gravedigger and Mentor of the Meek.
Actually, Mentor, but that Green Seeker card is amazing.
Yeah, it is great, but I like Gravedigger.
Really good.
I like Gravedigger a lot more. But I think Mentor's the pick.
Yeah,
because it's
amazing.
It's an engine and it fits in a few different decks that you can draft right now. So,
I mean, it's any creature, right?
Yeah, creatures with power 2 or less.
So yeah, I would definitely pick it.
Yeah, dude, I think Mono White could potentially crush next Standard.
It might. There's a lot of good stuff. Mono colors in general are kind of a thing right now.
Yeah,
I mean, mono green is sweet.
But here's the thing: is it gets under mono green.
Oh, it gets under.
Right?
Yeah, it definitely does.
But I mean, the question comes is, does it have enough removal to deal with mono green?
Because if not, it'll just get run over.
Right. I mean, it does get stuff that blocks Steel Leaf Champion, Banalish Marshal at turn 3.
Sure.
Angels eventually are nice. It's got a lot of flyers.
That's true.
So I like that.
But
yeah, I like the Mentor and War Leader combo.
Yeah.
Every combat step you draw 2 cards.
Totally not busted at all.
Yeah. I mean, definitely not. Yeah. I mean, that's going to be good.
All right. So guys, make sure to answer the question of the week this week, and of course we'll be back next week for the next episode. I did want to mention, by the way, before we head out, I talked with our good friend Andrew. I'm bringing this up to you for the first time.
Okay.
So Will and I talked about
veto.
Andrew's going to be mad when he hears that. No,
I'm kidding.
So Will and I talked about, actually in episode 100, bringing other people on and discussing topics and things like that, either through Discord, voice calling, something like that.
Yeah.
Andrew has an interesting topic, which I will not spoil yet, but he has a lot of opinions on this topic, and so he might be our first guest.
I would love that.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know Andrew, he's streamed with us a few times. He's a really nice dude, good friend of ours. He also does all of the print stuff. Anything print that we do, that all goes through Andrew.
He made our shirts,
posters,
made our
cups,
our posters.
By the way, you should buy posters.
Oh yeah, if you're a fan of the Planes of Magic, which I know you are, because you a nerd. You should buy some posters.
Yes. We have 2 different options for the posters. There's a $30 option with a foam core backing and a $40 option with a wooden frame. It's just a little more sturdy.
I like that.
And it, I think, looks a little bit better. But both are open. All you have to do is message us directly, and we will give you all the details. Very easy. You just pay through PayPal, and we'll ship it out with tracking and all that.
Yeesh.
But yeah.
Yeesh.
Cool stuff. Definitely buy that. But yeah, so Andrew may be on. Probably not next week. The soonest it would be the week after that.
What Kevin means to say is Andrew will be on.
All right. Well, we said it now.
I don't know what the topic is, but I'm ready.
Should I spoil it? It's not like, I mean, I think it's a unique topic. Not unique.
Yeah,
it's a cool topic.
Give him a little teaser.
So, Andrew, being a prank guy, has a lot of opinions on proxies. And just on how they either are good or bad for people who play casually, and how they can affect actual competitive environments in a negative way. Things like that. Fake cards being a big part of this as well.
Sure. Okay.
Which is something we have not ever really touched on.
No, we've never talked about fakes.
Because counterfeit cards are obviously a problem.
Right.
But yeah, it's interesting. He's got a lot of very specific opinions on this.
Huh.
So we may be in a debate at some point with this one.
We haven't had a debate since Ponder v. Jace.
Yeah, you're right.
For you history buffs out
For
there.
you history buffs who care about it resolves. All none of you. Okay, so
I'm a history buff. Who cares?
there you go. Way to be there.
Yeah.
There's always you. But yeah, so we're excited about having guests on. That's going to be something we're going to try and implement in the future. We've actually got a couple people who are already interested.
Friends of the channel.
Friends of the channel. People we have not had the real opportunity to meet before this. And so it's kind of nice to actually get to reach out and talk with some people directly.
More, yeah.
Yeah, which has always been our goal from the beginning, was to meet cool people.
Yeah.
Like all of you. On that note, guys, thank you so much for watching this episode of It Resolves. We are going to get out of here. My name is Kevin.
My name's Will.
And this has been It Resolves.
I want to proxy a mountain just to see what happens.